Hi, I'm Kristen Liefeld Roberts, and this data overview project goes over milestones data and demographic data for Creekland Middle School in Cherokee County, Georgia. The intended audience for this presentation is a school improvement team for a data meeting, specifically data analysis related to school improvement. The purpose of this presentation is to review demographic profile changes at the school for the last 3 years, identify strengths and weaknesses in student achievement in English language arts over the last 3 years, identify strengths and weaknesses in students with disabilities in English language arts over the last 3 years, and then continue data analysis as it relates to our school improvement plan. First, we'll look at an overview of the school. This will include the CCRPI score for 2018-2019. It's broken down into 4 different indicators: content mastery, progress, closing gaps, and readiness. But really this just assesses how well the students are doing. They look at our attendance data and other factors to give the school a grade. And CMS earned a B with an average of an 85%. Here's an attendance summary. This goes over Creekland Middle School's attendance rates for the last 3 years. Chronic absenteeism and students that miss more than 15 days. It's not a huge problem at Creekland. We would like to see that number lower than it is, but we have fairly good attendance. The demographic profile for the last 3 years remains relatively unchanged. You can see that the population is primarily white, and if you look at the last 3 years, those numbers stay pretty close to the same. If you look at the demographic profile for student gender, you're going to see this also remain relatively unchanged. It's leveling out a little bit towards, by 2018-2019, the number of males and females are close to each other, but there are still more male students than female students, all 3 years. If you look at the student population broken down by subgroups, we have mostly students without disabilities and mostly students who are not economically disadvantaged. So if you look at these numbers, you're going to see higher populations of students without disabilities, mostly English proficient, and not economically disadvantaged. And that remains the same from 2016 all the way to 2019. I wanted to dive deeper into student absences for these at-risk subgroups because part of our school improvement plan is to increase growth for students on the milestones that are getting a beginning score, specifically students with disabilities. So I wanted to look at our absenteeism related to these 2 subgroups, some of which we see overlapping at Creekland, the economically disadvantaged and students with disability. Some of those populations are going to overlap. So I wanted to look at this to see if possibly student attendance is related to achievement and kind of make a connection between those 2 things. And if you look at these numbers for 2018-2019, we do have a significant number of the student with disabilities population. 14% of that population has chronic absenteeism, plus 18% with more than 15 days absent. Same with the economically disadvantaged students. That number is even a little bit higher. We have 21.8% with more than 15 days absent and 18.4% with chronic absenteeism. So I definitely think when we look at increasing student achievement and growth of scores for these subgroups, we need to look at getting them in school and reaching out to them and maybe creating like mentor relationships with these students to keep them at school. And then here we have the teacher population broken down by number of years they have been teaching. So you can see that a majority of teachers are in this 1 to 10 year range, with a good number of teachers in this 11 all the way to 30-year range. So Creekland Middle School has a pretty balanced mix of teachers that are new and then veteran teachers with experience. There are 19% of the teachers are male and 81% of the teachers are female. So many more female teachers. That's probably something that is common for middle school. If I were going to make an assumption about this data, really a stereotype about teachers. The teacher population by race and ethnicity, you can see, is 98% white. It kind of is even less diverse than the student population, which is interesting. An overview of student achievement data now. So looking past, or kind of in combination with, the demographics of the school, we're going to look at the student performance in English language arts. First, we have the data for the state. This looks at milestones achievement for the last 3 years and shows a range of beginning, developing, proficient, distinguished learners. You can see that in the state we have seen an increase in distinguished learners from the last 3 years gradually, and then there's a 3% jump between 2017 and 2018. Which makes sense because the first year that we took the milestones in 2014-2015, we really had no idea what it was going to be like, and I think that teachers have adapted to this test and are a little bit better prepared to teach their students to be successful in the milestones. This shows the district, and you can see an increase in proficient learners when you compare it to the state. There are, go backwards. You're going to see more proficient learners here when you look at even over the last 3 years, a significant number. There hasn't been a lot of change between proficient learners, but we have seen a jump in distinguished learners, which is good. It's gone from being 12.4 both the 2016-2017 and 2017-2018 school years to a 16% in the 2018-2019. And when that's compared to the school, we actually have 3% higher than the district does in that category. So our students are growing and we have more success, but this is still not where we want it to be. We want to see more people here that are growing from proficient to distinguished and see more higher student achievement. So looking specifically at how this data connects to our school improvement goals, the first thing that I want to look at is this achievement data for the last 3 years on the milestones for the school. And our goal is to increase the percentage of students scoring at levels 3 and 4 on the Georgia milestones in ELA and math by 3% each year for 2017-2018, 2018-2019, and then the 2019-2020 school years. And that number is going to actually change to 2020-2021. Since last semester we did not take the milestones, we're going to have to look at the data from this school year to see if we can be successful in that. You can see on the proficient learners, we have not seen the 3% growth. It's almost there. But in the distinguished learners, we have seen actually a 5.2% growth, which is successful. We would need to see that grow even more, and that becomes challenging when we have students that are already high performing, pushing them from proficient to distinguished. So the goal in the English language arts classroom needs to be to make sure those students that are high achievers already are still growing and still being challenged and are using higher order thinking skills and extending their learning beyond what they already know so that they can still grow. The school improvement plan says that in order to do this, we will implement consistently and pervasively content and language objectives, project-based learning, and increase time on task. Use the Hess cognitive rigor matrices. That rigor is going to be important to making sure those students are using higher order thinking skills, and that will help them, the students who are already proficient, move and grow when they take the milestones. And then providing timely and informative feedback, which I think helps everybody grow. And then I wanted to take a look, kind of making a connection back to our attendance data in the beginning, at students with disabilities. Our other school improvement goal is to decrease the percentage of students with disabilities that score a level 1 on the George milestones for ELA and math by 3% each year during the 2017-2018, 2018-2019, and 2019-2020 school years, or until the subgroup performance target is met. So, if you look at this, we have many of our student with disabilities population in both the 2018-2019 and 2017-2018 years scoring at beginning level, almost half. And then we have almost just as high, running close to 35% for both years in developing. That means the majority of our students with disabilities are not considered to be meeting the expectations when they get to the end of the year. This is tough to look at because we have so many factors that play in here. We want to make sure the students with disabilities are getting the right accommodations and that our strategies are meeting the needs of these students. Creekland recommends scaffolding strategies to boost rigor in the classroom. Oftentimes, students with disabilities are just trucking along as best they can, and we knock off some of the more difficult tasks. So rather than knocking off the difficult tasks, using better scaffolding strategies to make sure that they're still working up to those rigorous activities. And then lastly, facilitate consistently student-focused classroom driven by research-based best practices. I think that we can apply those things to specifically meeting the needs of students with disabilities and making sure they are receiving appropriate accommodations to help them be successful. And it's tough to look at milestone scores as the measure for their success because there are so many different factors, but it is important that we are not dismissing what they're capable of. And if we look at scaffolding and student-focused classrooms and making sure that they're growing and looking at their potential for success, I think that we will see our beginning and developing learners grow to proficient learners. At this point in the presentation, I would like to see if you guys have any questions or if you have any thoughts about helping this population of students be successful, or any ideas for fostering positive relationships with these students so that they feel more comfortable asking questions. I think that this data definitely shows that our school improvement goals are appropriate, that we should be looking at increasing student achievement for learners that are already proficient, and then increasing growth of students that have disabilities. Thank you.